Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Finish a Journal with me, Tamara Laporte from Willowing Arts. I hope you are all well and that you are settling into the end of 2021. Another year has gone by and it was a very quick year, I have to say, for me. A bit of a blur, similar to 2020. Well, I'm back here with another episode of Finish a Journal. And, I am working in the third journal at the moment still. That, as you can see, is again not really being filled up that much. Lots of sketches in there that I'm not finishing. But also quite a few spreads that I'm really happy with and I'm really enjoying. What I've been doing lately is I've been working in sort of 2 or 3 colors only, and this one you have actually seen me do, by the way. But like here, these kinds of, I use these sort of oranges and pinks, and sometimes adding a bit of teal in there. And I'm really loving the effect on these, let's say, loose watercolor, expressive watercolor portraits. This one is one of my favorites here. And today I'm going to show you how I'm doing one of those, how I create one of these expressive watercolor portraits. So here's another one that I did recently. I'm really enjoying doing these, but look, lots of little sketches there. And of course, again, I'm going to be annoyed with myself for not finishing these, but I am going to eventually working on these faces as well. So let's see what I'm going to make today. You've already seen a little bit of the preview in the beginning of this video, of course. So I always like doing little voiceovers for you guys. It's nice to just be chatting while I watch myself work. So here I am sketching a front-facing portrait. If you are ever interested in learning from me, by the way, I run many courses on my site www.willowing.org, where it would be a real-time lesson rather than these sort of time-lapsed videos. So yeah, I do loads of classes, in case you didn't know, on www.willowing.org. But anyway, at the moment you see me create a front-facing portrait in the way that I use a sort of guidelines to help me figure out where to place my facial features, and this can change. This is a rough guideline. I often play around and play about with it. Sometimes I don't like the placement of my features, sometimes I move them up and down, but I start off usually with a vague guideline as to where I want the facial features to go. And then once I have kind of a guide once I've placed the vague outlines of the facial features, I start to bring in the detail and I start to refine the kind of smaller elements, such as bringing in the irises on the eyes, slightly more thicker eyebrows, the nostrils, some shading. And here I am working with a mechanical pencil by Pentel, which is the Graph Gear one, and it's a weighted mechanical pencil, which is I really like that. I really enjoy working with these kinds of pencils. And you can choose what kind of lead you use. I often work with a 2B lead, but this time I worked with an HB one, and that's helpful if you want to erase quite a bit, because if you go with the heavier ones, they're harder to erase because they're sort of darker, smudgier graphite. And here you can see when I erase, it really erases everything. So when you work with HB, it's easier to erase. So now I'm erasing the guidelines. And what I usually do at this point is I sort of check in with myself to see if I connect with the face. I can sometimes end up with a face that is technically correct, but I don't connect with it, or I just don't like the facial expression, or something about it not quite clicking with me. And if that's the case, I will adjust and change. I might try and change the facial expression, or maybe make the eyes a bit smaller, or make the nose a bit bigger. It's all about however I'm feeling in relation to the face, or what kind of mood I'm getting off the face, and if I'm happy with that or not. Once I'm happy with the face and the facial features, I start adding watercolor. And I love currently using super bright oranges and neon pinks. I know, you're thinking, what? can hurt your eyes. I go through phases of like really being attached to colors and loving working with them. And currently orange is one of my favorites, which is really interesting to me because for years I wouldn't touch orange. And in fact, I was repulsed by orange. And it's so funny how over time your likes and your preferences change. And that's totally cool. It's just how it is. I think it really coincided with me teaching color theory in depth on my course Kaleidoscope. I really started to appreciate orange more and more and more when I worked on that course. Again, if you're interested in learning from me or want to find out more about any of my art courses, I teach art classes in depth on my website www.willowing.org, and the link is in the description below. Now, what I loved about these portraits is I make them messy and expressive. I have another side to me which likes to do things in a controlled and tidy and neat way. But this type of style and approach can really allow me to be more, really put my feelings into the journal, into the spread, and just express and be a bit more messy and create splatters and drips. And it's not about realism as such, it's about how the colors combined make me feel. And I basically take on a very different approach to if you're doing a super precise thing. And I feel that both approaches have merit and have their pros and cons. So it really depends for me on how I'm feeling or who is louder in my head. And by that I mean I have an inner illustrator who's more tight and controlled, and I have an inner painter who would love to just throw paint about. And at different times, one or the other character is louder. And at times, they have this really brilliant way of, collaborating even. So parts of my paintings will be like really controlled and neat, and then the rest of it is like really expressive. I think those are my most favorite times. And this actually is, bits of the illustrator are in here for sure, particularly when I do the eyes later on, and I suppose when I doodle and that kind of stuff. But anyway, so when I currently am doing this is not realism. It's partially based on, I try to get shadows and shades in, not color-wise, but sort of depth-wise and value-wise that makes sense from a shading light and dark perspective. But clearly I'm not working with realistic colors because, few people in the world, I suppose, are orange and pink. I have never met anyone, but I don't know, perhaps someone like that does exist. So yeah. So here, when you paint in watercolor, something you need to know is that watercolor tends to fade as it dries. So the vibrancy of the colors that you see, the wet patches there, they are more vibrant than the dried up parts you can see. So therefore, in my case, if you want to keep the vibrancy, which often I do, you have to do either one of two things, which is one, work in layers, or two, do not add too much water and just keep your paint very pigmented. So add as little water as possible and then you'll get more vibrancy. But even that will still dry and fade a bit. So just remember that if you're ever interested in working with watercolor. And it also depends on the brands that you're using. My favorite watercolor brands are Schminke, Schminke, and then I have some Daniel Smith, and I have a few Jane Davenports as well. So any of the paints out there, watercolor paints that have vibrant colors, are on my list of faves. Note earlier that I added some splatters to the background and sort of to the side of her face. That's one of those expressive things that I absolutely enjoy doing. It's very uncontrolled, you can't control where it goes. It just sort of meets that playfulness in me, and the expressive side of me gets lots of joy out of that. I also really enjoy adding quirky, weird, strange elements to my paintings. Such as doing strange, unusual things to the eyes or adding abstract elements to the surrounding area of the face. At times the hair is only half hair and then the rest of it is a cloud or a rainbow or these kinds of things. So it becomes a little bit surrealistic. I often call my work magical realism, but then I found out that that's actually a literary theme that isn't quite what I do. So the theme, or the name of it might not be really applicable to what I do, but that's what this feels like. So I tend to create people or portraits or creatures of some sorts, but I place them in very unrealistic, non sort of logical spaces, or I add odd elements to the spread or the face. And I love doing that for the mystery of it, for the guessing of it, that someone who looks at it wonders what it's about. And I try not to always explain it, so that the viewer effectively ends up having a dialogue with themselves, or they go deeper into themselves to figure out, well, what does that mean, and why is this happening, and why is there a boat on her head, and does it maybe mean this or this? And then that way you're kind of exploring your own psyche and your own relationship to the painting. But I also absolutely love analyzing my own reasons for what it means, and it often does mean things to me. But mostly what I love about doing this sort of odd stuff is that it opens up my felt sense for me. So for me, adding quirky and weird elements or symbols to my paintings functions as a doorway into what I like to call the right-brained relational part of me, the poetic side in me. I'm a very logical, left-brained person and find it hard sometimes to access the felt sense of my, self. And by adding strange, unclear, odd elements and objects and doodles to my paintings, it opens the door to this much more abstract side to me in who I am. And it gives me literally a sense of relief and joy that I can enter that world, because it's a very hard world to enter for me. So I like to be analytical and intellectual, and I like to use Excel spreadsheets. So it's just a way to kind of really connect with another part of me that I find hard to access. Now, and look here at how beautiful that one teal eye is standing out. Really, now I look at this, I wish I'd stopped here. Very often when I make these sorts of spreads, or any of my work, I love often where they are maybe a third of the way into a painting. I also love it at the end, by the way, but often I love it at the stage when it's not quite finished, but it does sort of feel finished. Even this finished would to me be finished and would be mysterious and confusing, but yet beautiful. And so it calls you into a questioning and a querying and going inwards, I feel. And these kinds of faces of these people, I feel they pull you into some kind of weird magical world that just creates questions, but I feel kind of intriguing, inspiring questions. Not in my case, it might not be for you, but in my case it does. Yeah, so that's why you see me always faff and add all these, and it's also very natural for me. It's not like I'm thinking, and now comes the time to add all these weird things. That's not really how it works for me. I can't help myself so I just love doodling anyway. I like putting in words that maybe, the word today is devotion. And I don't know where I heard it, the word. I know of the word, of course. I was listening either to a song or to something else, and the word devotion was there. And I suddenly just started musing on the word devotion and what it meant to me. And it took me actually really deep. It went into how I feel about my children, that I feel devoted to them. And then I said to myself, well, what does that mean when you're devoted to someone or something? Because it felt, so I thought, well, is that about them or about you? So I like pondering on abstract concepts at times and how what it means to me. Where it takes me. So I might follow a word down a path. I might end up writing poetry with it. I might end up writing down related words or poetry or quotes. And it happens while I'm drawing. I'm considering these words, and that's one thing. But other approaches to, or what happens to me as well while I journal, is I might be literally trying to convey what I've been, or have I say convey, but also have a listening witness. So these characters are often listening to me, if you will, to what I'm struggling with in that moment in time, or what I feel I need. Often in my case, see, some people make art and they want to convey the pain in the art, and that's awesome. In my case, if I am sitting with pain, I often internally am processing the pain, and I have quote-unquote conversations with my higher self, who then, this is me of course, but who ends up saying, listening a lot, empathizing a lot, and then says, so what we need is this, what we need to do is this. And it's often something fairly spiritual, so it's a higher message, a higher self message, such as it might be best to surrender to this moment, or it might be best to seek support or self-care, and so often there'll be quotes like, the wound is the place where the light enters you. These quotes by either Khalil Gibran or Rumi, or lyrics from inspiring musicians that I love. These can all make their way into my journals. So odd symbols and shapes have the same kind of effect of accessing this sort of relational, abstract, more right-brained part of me. Why are the little stars in the neck area? And it's almost like it short circuits my brain, and I love it. So I'm such a due to trauma in my background, my left brain became highly activated to protect myself, and it means that I'm quite I strategize in life to be safe, effectively. That's what a lot of people with trauma end up doing. And it means that you have no time for, poetry and symbolism. That sort of stuff is accessed in another part of the brain, and you have no time. You need to survive. So I lacked that for a long time. I didn't even understand. Whenever I listened to artists or musicians that had poetic lyrics, not just "I give you shelter from the storm, baby" type lyrics, but more like, "and the piano flew in the sky," something, something that wasn't concrete. And my brain was just couldn't cope and found it annoying. I was trying to analyze, what does it mean? This is not logical words. And so for a long time, it was actually something I couldn't cope with. But also always had a yearning. I felt like there was something in that type of way of being, thinking, and creating that seemed incredibly liberating and connecting. So over the years, this has made its way into my art making, and it's my favorite kind of art making. So I like it less if it's just a portrait with just a face that is realistic. I can be impressed by realism, for sure. I think it's amazing when people can do incredibly realistic art. But I love it when, even if in realistic art, there's still some kind of quirky, weird things. I want Alice in Wonderland type stuff, sort of, for me. And that's, again, my personal preference, and everyone is different. So there's not like one way of creating, or your preferences are right. Luckily, it's so good that we all love different things in life. So there's something for everyone, and such beautiful tapestry of art that exists, and everyone can provide something that will be liked by someone else. There'll always be someone that loves what you do, and your thing, your heart's, your passion, and your whatever you're devoted to. Hey, here it comes again, the word. Because I was thinking in terms of devotion, I think of people, and I wasn't entirely thinking about devotion to work. And there's a lot of people, obviously, in life that devote themselves to their work. That's also, anyway. I won't go into the meaning of devotion and what it means, but I have been sitting with the word and the concept for a while I was creating this. So it's funny that that word came up again. Now, this black, by the way, is the Stabilo All pencil. So if you ever want a pencil that sort of disintegrates into vast black puddles of paint, definitely go and get yourself a Stabilo All pencil. I love these pencils, but you need to be very careful because they are very, very water soluble. Check it out. And here I'm doing some drips. I love drips. And see, so I'm doing odd things like, why would there be drips coming from someone's neck, you know? And then my brain will go into, oh, is that, oh, am I, you know, is this my blah, blah, blah? Is this the black tar inside my throat chakra or something? I don't know. I do like to also have a conversation with myself. Like, why am I doing this here? What is happening? Is something happening for you? Or is it just playful? Like, that's the other thing. It doesn't always have to be a deep thing. Sometimes it's deep. Sometimes it's just, I like to see what happens when I put drips on my chin, you know? And so this way, the journaling process becomes a deeper connection with self, a deeper understanding of what might be there for you. It can be. So again, for many people, art journaling is just art journaling. It's just creating art. Cool bananas. For some other people, it becomes a spiritual or therapeutic, a deeper process wherein they get to sit with themselves and learn to understand themselves more deeply. That's the case for me, and I do absolutely love doing that. I can be in deep tears at times if I work with a poem or something that has touched me. And sometimes I go about doing this intentionally, so I'll sit with something and I go, right, why have I been so depressed this week or whatever? Let me sit with that and journal while I sit with it. At other times, I might start a journaling process and then suddenly I'm like, oh, yes, I needed this week or something, you know, suddenly it starts to come to the forefront. And these are all ways that I can journal or end up making paintings, but usually in the journal. And again, it might be different for other people. Don't think that my way is the only way one can journal. So many people do incredibly interesting things with journaling and work differently, and it's important for you to find your own, whatever works for you. My way might work for you, or other people's way, or you find a completely unique way, or you find a combination of ways. I love about art that, at least in the mixed media art world, where we sort of all came together and just made up our own rules, is that there are no rules. And it's so freeing. You know, you're not here in art school where there's some arbitrary rules and judges that say it must adhere to the following requirements. That's not the case. And so there's much beauty in the freedom of discovering your own style approach to journaling or art making and combining supplies. That's the thing about mixed media, you know. We're bringing all these supplies together. I work with markers and crayons and watercolor paint. I might bring in some acrylics. Here are pencils I'm using as well. That's the beauty of it. You can bring it all together and see what works for you and what doesn't. So I'm coming to the end of this spread now, although I say that, but I actually worked the next day a little bit more on it, and I didn't film that part because by the end of it I was a bit bothered by the black or the darker patches around the wing, the butterfly wing that sits around her neck. So I actually try to fix that by adding more color. Actually, let me just show you a picture now. Alright, you can see that the butterfly wing here disappeared under her hair, and I in the end preferred this design, but I don't show that in this video because I decided at very last minute the next day. And I'll show this again at the end, but I liked both versions really, but I also ended up adding more abstract to the background a little bit more, so I don't have, the final touches are not included in this video, but you get the feel for the approach to it all. And I'll show you again the final piece at the very end of this video. So we're closer to the end of this video now. Just want to thank you for sitting with me. If you managed to make it all this way, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel if you love this video. It's really helpful to artists on YouTube if you engaged and left a comment and liked it and subscribed and all that sort of things. It really helps the artists to grow their channel. And if you want to learn from me more, I would so love that. We are starting Lifebook 2022 on the 1st of January 2022, and it's currently on sale with 30% off. So if you'd love to learn these kinds of, to learn how to create portraits and how to create quirky animals and how to learn to work with mixed media, watercolor, acrylics, markers, pencils, crayons, the whole shebang, I would love to see you on any of my courses. And like I said, Lifebook is the one that starts in January, so I hope to see you there too. All the links are below in the description. I thank you in advance for checking it out. Now then, let's see where we are. I just added devotion to her face because that was what I was musing on that evening. And I do absolutely love to add some white, marks of all kinds to the darker parts of any of my spreads. It always adds that sparkle and the high contrast. Really striking, that I love doing here. Working with the Posca pen there. And I'll be doing these highlights, and these white touches are always very helpful. They give a really strong kind of, like I just said, contrast, and it really adds sparkle for me. But don't overdo it. I have a tendency to overdo it because I go into sort of a meditative state and find it hard to stop adding little lines and sparkles and dots. And then people go, my eyes, what's happened here, Tam? And I'm so sorry. It is very, very addictive. So it can be addictive when you add all your doodles and sparkles, but it's also very joyful. So, tread with care, tread with joy. And you see here what I mean by that black darker spot behind the wing? It makes no sense, or it's somehow was just too jarring for me. So afterwards I made the wing just disappear behind the hair. Not that the rest is so realistic, of course. That's the funny thing again, isn't it? That certain things, like the whole thing, what, flower on her head, moon on her face, words on her face, you go, that's not realistic either. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, but the butterfly is like it's sitting in front of the hair, even though the hair goes over the butterfly. And that's what I can't quite cope with. But anyway, it should in theory just work if you think that, how the rest of the page is coming together. Anyway, regardless, I've enjoyed working on this spread. I love how it came out. It's so expressive and colorful. It's really fun to work with just 2 or 3 colors. Quite a challenge, but also just really liberating again. And so, yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here as always. I so appreciate your comments, your likes, your love, your kindness. It means more to me than you'll ever know. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day. You are loved. Much love. Bye-bye.